Okay. Today I want to do a little video with what's going on. It's something that's been going on for a while, and it seems the more I conflict with this, the more I get blocked off of social media. I was kicked off of social media back in April on Wikipedia, and that's what I want to go back to. I made a video about this prior, and it's about all the issues we got going on in this country right now and where they all stem from. One, I made a video that's on my Facebook that everybody can go back and look at. On the Facebook page to that video, it had about the election fraud that's going on, the theft, and where you can see current recent cases now being listed with 2020 election corruption that's been going on in many of the so-called states, even though we have, like I said in that last video, Facebook and everybody talking about in the media and the talking heads and all these now rhinos coming out of the woodwork talking about there's no corruption, but yet we got 151 years or 154 years actually now of corruption since the last time the Democrats tried to steal an election through mail-in ballots back with Abraham Lincoln during the Civil War. And ever since then forward, there has been corruption in almost every election, and this is a fact. But one of the things today I want to talk about aside from that, you can watch that video if you want. It's on my Facebook page and my YouTube page. But what I want to talk about today is the confound. You see, the thing with what it is I talk to a lot of people, and even I've seen, like I said, a president make this mistake about a democracy and a republic, and I guess it's really indoctrination through the school system. Because like I could say, I haven't been indoctrinated, because in truth, I went to school on and off as a kid, but really didn't start going to school till I was near 13. And everything pretty much I know, everything in my life has been self-educated. There's no one really of a school institution or the government can take credit for what I know. I taught myself to read, like I say, and many times before, when I was very young, like just turning 5 years old. And by the time I was 5, I could read pretty good. And by the time I was 6, I could read just as well as anyone and write as well as anyone. But I learned to read pictorially, so it's a little bit different. But the point is that I became a nut for knowledge as a kid. I want to know everything. And well, when I look at the vision of what I've seen in history and what I find with the founders, and being that I grew up in New Jersey, and I had, right there, Washington, D.C., just right outside of New Jersey. When I was like around, I think 9 years old, my Aunt Fran, I remember taking me to Washington, D.C. with my brother Clint, my sister Diane, and my youngest sister Deb, and we all went with my Aunt Fran and my cousin Freddie, and what a blast that was. but like I say, in Washington, having the federal archives right there, in Jersey being a founding state, there was many things happened right around the area I was at, and the history was incredible, and I loved the history of America. One thing I'm going to share with you that I remember, a guy, Benny, was a guy who used to hang in the diner on Grove Street and Springfield Avenue with my pop-up, my uncle, and them guys in there. And I remember talking and debating about these very things with Benny when I was a young kid, like maybe 7 years old, 8 years old, and in the diner having a butter roll and a coffee back then. And I said to him, how do you know what the truth is? How do you figure out what's going on and what to believe from what everybody says in relation to like what our country was, what our history was? Because history and things like that was a major debate all the time in the diner with the old World War II veterans, and about us being a republic and who we are as a nation and the pride in America and how great we were. This is what these men spoke about. And I was blessed to be in there and hear these things and get the direction, the guidance to be able to understand and learn about the true founding principles of being an American and a Republican American at that. Mind you, though, I'd like to say, Benny was a rarity in Newark, New Jersey. He was a black Republican World War II veteran, but a very highly respected man of all the veterans and the men around that time, including me. I really liked Benny. He had a lot of knowledge. But the one thing, like I was saying, get to the point with him, when I asked him that, he said to me, if you want to know how a car is built, don't ask someone who's driving it, go ask Henry Ford. And that made so much sense. He said, when the person's driving the car and people who own the cars, everybody's going to tell you their opinion as a driver, but the builder of the car is the guy who's going to tell you how and why he built it the way he did. And if you want to know about the country, you got to go back to the guys who built and founded this nation. They'll tell you in their own words, in the history of this nation, what they wanted, what they envisioned, and what they intended. And that's where I'd like to go to now. You know, when we look back, like I'm just going to go over and touch real base on the fallacy right now that's being put out by the Democratic Party and the damage that it's doing to the posterity of our country and has been doing to our nation now for 5 decades, since the 50s, and actually since the Civil War time, following the Civil War time, and actually even prior to the Civil War. Matter of fact, since this nation was founded, these people have been the enemies within. And this is a fact we have to come to truth to face. But one of the most important things we have to do is face the truth. You know, the so-called Joe Biden, and Democrats right now, they have this saying. They say, you know, we pick truth over facts. And that sounds so confusing and idiot. But, you know, it's a democratic statement that comes from a communist kind of perspective of that of totalitarianism that's been around for 10,000 years. You see, it goes all the way back to the ancient times of the great rulers of even the fallacies of the demigods to ancient Egypt. And what it is that, you see, today we recognize that we know of when we read in history. You got like Albert Einstein's a genius, Tesla's a genius. We know of many geniuses of modern time. But, you know, we never think about the geniuses in the past, in the past of our history. And that's what you got to understand, is that the evolution of time and the evolution of nations rising and falling all are, in one way or another, kicked off and coordinated by geniuses, either evil or good geniuses. And throughout history, you'll find that the geniuses were always at battle and war. You know, you had the wannabe evil genius of like Egypt, and then too in this too, when you look at world history and you study from the beginning of what we know in written records and go forward, you find your faith in God, because you start to realize that, you know, though man has his own free will and cause and effect is set off by the laws of nature and nature's God, and by how they will react to everything, and that God is all-knowing, you do realize that God in some ways is so all-knowing in that he always plans to have an answer to the problem and to get the problem fixed and back on track to what was the intention, the true intent of God. And throughout history you see this over and over. And like what we're going to speak on real quick is about like with the ancient pharaohs of Egypt. These guys were evil genius. There was evil genius behind this that came up with the idea of creating a higher hierarchy of authority through the pharaoh, who would be considered a half man, half God kind of thing, and establishing the principles of what would protect him and what would be his underclass of, you know, ranks and what have you. They were the ones who developed all this system of like a government. It all starts with ancient Egypt and actually goes a little bit farther back beyond that. Most don't realize this, but if you really study ancient history, you'll find Babylon existed before Egypt. And the Babylonians actually had this theory, but in practice, several times that they tried, like with about 1,200 years before the rise of Egypt to actually become the great civilization it was, the Babylonians had several times tried to raise the civilization of a totalitarian kind of control by the Babylonians tribe, and they got pretty much slaughtered. So they kind of passed their idea off to the great genius of the pharaohs of Egypt, and they went forward with the idea, and they had success with the smoke and the mirrors and making the golden heads and the uniforms and the rankings and all these things. A genius thought about these things and thought, you know, he figured out the psychology of humanity and how to be able to play on it. But, you know, throughout time, in the evolution of time, we don't think about, you know, the geniuses of now times, and evil geniuses and good geniuses, and that's what we got at play and at stake right now. When you look at, like I've said this before, many of the world's nations, you have some of these, like when you look at Arabia, you look at Egypt, you look at China, these nations have been around for thousands of years. We here in America are 244 years new. That's it. We've been here for 244 years. That's it. You know, we took our stand against Great Britain 244 years ago, and in that stand, our founders, George Washington, James Madison, Benjamin Franklin, Thomas Jefferson, and many others who were of the founding time, they took their stand. Those are the famous names mostly known. They took their stand, and what they did was, and then too, you know, today I talk to people, they think this is like an overnight thing. Like one day, somebody woke up and they're like, hey, you know, I think we should overthrow Great Britain. I got news for you. This was going on for nearly 100 years in the planning for the Declaration of our independence. It was 100 years in the planning. And, the 13 original colonies were the founding true Americans. And today, like, you understand, and the truth of the matter is, we were founded, and what we were founded at first, we were a federalist system, and where we were like in friendship with all the states until we decided what we were going to have as a government. When we look at our Declaration of Independence, we lay out our rules of what we feel a government should be. We state that, it should be a government of the people, for the people, by the people, and that the government would be there by our consent, and that we, the people, maintain the authority and power to amend, alter, or abolish any form of government we give consent to. We are the ultimate power, we the people. And that's what is the Republic. The Republic is that, we the people, but it's not the majority of the whole nation. Because even in the founding times, what's got to be understood is that this nation was founded, by a minority. They have it now when you go and you look and they say, oh, it's a myth because it's more, or, some people actually say it was less, but they have like me, if you go to my Facebook, it says I'm a 3%er. And what that 3% represents is honoring the 3% of the population in the time of the Revolutionary War that were the ones who rose up, actually put their life on the line and fought Great Britain. Only 3% of the population, an estimated 3%, could have been 4, but, it's known as the 3%. And that 3% of the population that rose up are who blessed everyone of the majority in this nation with freedom and liberty for all. There was mostly a large divided, outside of those who didn't fight, there was a majority of cowards who just were like sheep people that would just go along with whatever would go and flow. As long as they felt like they were getting whatever it is they wanted, they were okay with whatever way it was. Either we were free or a tyrant or a slave. It really didn't matter. Some people were like Hank Johnson, or like, Donna the deer sign lady, if you look that up on YouTube. Just people who lack common sense for the vision of what, freedom is. Freedom of mind, freedom of life, freedom to pursue happiness, your God-given life, the most precious, valuable thing you have. But some people just, they don't care. They don't care, and the majority doesn't care. And it seems evident to that today in this world, that the majority doesn't care. But that's okay, because it's never been about the majority. It's always been about the minority. The minority who is strong enough, wise enough, courageous enough to stand up and take a position to make a change. And that's what this nation came about by. But today, the truth of the founding of this nation and its principles are being twisted around in history and lied about by the Democrats. They have hijacked the education in this country. They have hijacked the social media in this country, and it's pretty clear that they are trying to propagate the story of America as they would want it to be, and we just can't let that happen. Because there's only one way it can be, and that's the truth. And the truth is very, very important. It has to be the truth, because a lie just isn't real. And if we allow our nation to be built off the premises of lies that are considered the truth, then we're fake. We're fake. And that's what we're facing right now, actually becoming a fake banana republic, if we allow what's going on to continue. But I just want to show you the lies and how it goes. And this is one of the reasons I was literally kicked off of Wikipedia. I can no longer edit, amend, or go on or suggest or start pages on Wikipedia. I can look at it, that's about it, but they won't let me do any kind of publishing or nothing, because I got kicked out of Wikipedia by a Democrat who I was disagreeing with about his page, which I'm going to show you right now. And this is what this is all about. I got to go here. Okay, and we're going to look at this page. This page here is a Democratic Republican Party. Now, my problem why I got kicked off Wikipedia was I raised issue that this right here is a fallacy. It's not real. I'm not saying that the Democratic Republican Party didn't exist. It did exist, but it didn't exist as American founding principles or with any of the American founders. It was an ambiguous party. It was a party of idiocy, of a divisive method that was being used by that of the British Tories, who were the British loyalists at the time, who were trying to keep a divisive scenario going with the American government to prevent us from actually completing what we set out to do in establishing this nation. The Tories were the British loyalists known as the Kingsmen. We were at civil conflict with them from the time of the Revolutionary War forward. Jump way ahead forward, 1828. It was the British Tory, the traitors within, who formed the Democratic Party because they were the majority of slaveholders. And the way they became the majority of slaveholders in this country was that after we overthrew Great Britain, King George III prior had appointed these Tories as governors and overseers of the large plantations in the South, and it was King George who was importing all these slaves to labor those, and these guys kind of sat back on the front porch and watched the slaves do the labor. And as we know when we look back in history about the treatment of these slaves, these people were evil, sick, disgusting, perverted, elitist scumbags is what they were, and they still are to this very day. They're the same Democrats they were then. And, that's who they were. But they became the majority because after we claimed independence, they claimed the lands they were managing for King George III and all the slaves as their own property. So they went from being servants to King George III, working in service for him, to now major landholders and owners and slaveholders and owners in this nation. And they became like they were, from the door, the wealthiest people and the largest of landowners in the nation. So it was like, to them a great benefit, and they want to keep things that way. But anyway, back to the point what I'm trying to say here. The Democratic Republican Party and the democracy thing is all we hear today. Our democracy, we hear this on the news, our democracy. Even I've heard the president say our democracy. And that's why I say this has been going on long-standing, probably with higher education schools even, because we see that today with the professors. They're all left-leaning, liberal, democratic communist right now, socialist communist. It's disgraceful what we have allowed happen to this nation. I'm sure our founding fathers are rolling over in their grave right now. But the thing about the Democratic Party, I want to even read though, you see some amendments were made because of the issues I made back in April. And right here it says, not to be confounded with the current Democratic Party or the Republican Party in the United States, both of which indirectly descend from this party. That's not true either. Democratic Republican redirects here for other uses. See Democratic Republic. Disambiguation. That's an important part because that came after I was booted off of here by somebody who kind of is looked into it. But still these things sit up there because, we know as we see now, like with Facebook and social media, Twitter and what have you, that the left-leaning controlled the social media. So we're going to see Wikipedia continue to lie to the public about these things and creating these things right here. But here I want to just read one part. The Democratic Republican Party, better known at the time under various other names. Now, that's true. There was, like Democratic Republican Party is actually like an impossible thing because they're opposites. Under a democratic democracy, under a democratic state is a majority rule of an elitist form of governing, and where the people are subject to that of who they elect as an authority, and those they do elect are an authority over the people. That's the great difference between a republic. I explained this in another video I did that you can find on my YouTube, is democracy versus republic. And under a republic, the people are the republic, and the government is founded and guaranteed to make, in a true republic, a constitutional republic, of which though Plato and others in history have spoken of a republic and had a vision idea of what it was, and then we even see in ancient Greece where a republic actually was formed and where the king was just an equal with the people and dwelled among the people. There was no status of authority, of elitism. And, these things didn't last long, though, because the majority of the world is evil geniuses who want world domination and want to enslave all of humanity under their control. Now, I don't know if that was truly the intent of the true evil genius that started totalitarianism, maybe back 11, 12,000 years ago, but it does seem to be inherent in human nature for the evil in heart and mind of what makes up a totalitarian, that they still persist and pursue from that of when it was founded, because it still rests under, like you see, China has been around for 10,000 years. You have Egypt's been around for 8,000 years. You got Arabia's been around for 4,000 years. So you see that these people have been long-standing in their totalitarian pursuit for world domination, because all the ones that I've spoken of right now are like communist totalitarian regimes who seek to rule the world and keep everybody enslaved under their totalitarian authority. But you see, now here what we have going on is the Democrats are trying to assimilate America that we're a democratic nation, that we're a democracy. when we're not. We're a republic. And there is a great big difference. But like I say, when we look at this now, I just want to go to this other guy's page. This page was put up where he has the disambiguation. He put this up after I was booted off of here, and he makes the point that the Democratic Republican Party is a modern name for the U.S. political parties that existed from 1791 to 1825. In other words, when they say in other names, because back then, like I said, you had the British Loyalists, the Tories, who were trying to cause a divisive thing, and George Washington, as we all know, totally feared a multi-party system. And there was even, like I say, when we get ahead, I'm jumping ahead here, but James Madison had what was known as, he had enacted laws to prevent the Tories from being able to lie about the American government, its intent and its goal, because that's what they would do. They would literally go into communities and lie and make up lies about the Republic and scare people into not wanting to support the Republic or the idea of a federal centralized government. Even Thomas Jefferson was a smart man, a great man. I have great respect for all that he had. He had great vision and great understanding of many things, but he was a learning man. That's clear. And that, I say that's clear because some of the things that I can show you in relation to Jefferson that shows how he was a learning man, which I do have up. So I was just checking to see that. So we're going to look at that. And but here, this disambiguation is a thing of where it's something today said that may not have been said then, which it wasn't. It really wasn't, because when we look back then, we know Thomas Jefferson, James Madison, these guys were strong Republicans, and their tickets were Republican. When you look at the history and you look at the memorabilia of what was the voting, Thomas Jefferson had all of his voting memorabilia stated, be a Republican, let the true Republicans rise. There was never anything on any of the ballots or the tickets or anything that said Democratic Republican Party. That just didn't exist back then. It might have been mentioned among the Tories and the Federalists even as an attempt to try to create some kind of a political establishment of theory, and where they would try to confound people to want to accept a party where you could have people say, no, I'm sorry, I'm a Republican, and they go, well, we're the Democratic Republicans. Yeah, we agree with both, kind of thing like that. Maybe in that way it did go on, because there was a lot of divisiveness taking place in that time with the treasonous traitors within that we allowed to stay in our nation after we claimed our independence. But a Democratic Republican Party was not something that really existed in the sense of that of anything truly to the founding of America. It was a divisive attempted party of what would have took up, because the Tories, they infiltrated the Federalist Party, they infiltrated the Republican Party, and it was the Tories who founded the Democratic Party in 1828. So these are things, like I say, this was a divisive thing by an enemy within that we should have expelled out of our nation right from the very door, but we didn't. These people have been, and now all the way to this day, they have done nothing but rain terror and hell on this nation. And this is a fact. This is an unquestionable fact. But I want to stick to the point of what I'm saying here. When we look here, this is the kind of stuff when you look at Wikipedia, right? They have James Madison here running under the Democratic Republican Party. Now, this is a lie. He was a Republican. There was no Democratic Republican mentioned. There's no... and this was when I got kicked off of Wikipedia back this past April. I challenged the guy who made this page right here, and I said to him, you show me something from the Federal Archives of our history, something of memorabilia from our history that has written on it anything where James Madison, Thomas Jefferson, George Washington, or any of our founding fathers had Democratic Republic anywhere on any kind of literature. He couldn't do it. He couldn't do it. So this guy was obviously a left-leaning Democrat himself, and if you go to his personal page, you'll see that he's a left-leaning Democrat. He admits he's a Democrat. And of course, I guess Wikipedia must be owned by Democrats because they took favor with him, and even I tried to appeal it, but it was just run to a dead end. And this guy gets to maintain and keeps putting up his propaganda of lies, because like with this page now, you see this is even extending the lie. And what this is an attempted indoctrination to try and indoctrinate the posterity with fallacies of lies to believe that Democratic Party and democracies were somehow a part of the founding of America, when in all honesty of 100% truth, they're not. The Democrat, democracy, those two words cannot be found. You can search the entire Declaration of Independence and the entire Constitution. You will not find democratic democracy or democratic, the word democratic or democracy anywhere within them. But I can tell you where you will find Republican. In Article 4, Section 4, I don't have it up, so I'm pulling it up. Article 4, Section 4 of the United States Constitution, right here, it says, the United States shall guarantee to every state in this union a republican form of government and shall protect each of them against invasion and on application of the legislator or the executive when the legislator cannot be convened against domestic violence. Okay, so that's in the Constitution, and that's a fact. That's a matter of fact. That's the only form of government that the Constitution, we the people, consent to. Because the Constitution is what we the people consent to as a governing. Okay? And we only consent to that of a Republican form of government, and it's guaranteed to every state in the Union, which means every citizen in the United States is guaranteed a Republican form of government, not a Democratic form of government, and not a democratic democracy. And, so, I mean, like, when we look here, I got some things up, and I'll include links to all this here. This right here talks about George Washington, which is true. George Washington was opposed to any kind of like multi-party system. We were intended to be founded by the Constitution, as it states in Article 4, Section 4, as a Republican form of government only. And that was all that was ever needed. You see, because like today I talk with even people, they go, oh, well, no, we need to have different opinions of views. Well, we can have different opinions of views as one people of all equal under a republic. We can have that. Our government doesn't need to be a multi-fascist kind of government. Our government's not an authoritarian government. It's not like Great Britain or the UK or England. It's not like Venezuela. It's not like China. It's not like Russia. Okay, we're not a self-proclaimed elitist government. Our government is not a self-proclaimed elitist government of totalitarian. It's not even an authority. It doesn't even have an authority for itself. It only has a consent authority that we, the Republic of the People, give to it and consent for it to have. It's there as a service provider to us. As you see, making these big mistakes about calling it America a democracy or a democratic democracy is where we are losing. We're literally, by admitting and saying, oh yeah, we're a democratic democracy, we're giving up. Because we're out of ignorance. Of which that reminds me too, when you look at, like, I have some quote things here. And there was a quote by Thomas Jefferson said that, no people who are ignorant can be truly free. And that's where it comes to. Now, like I say, I respect Thomas Jefferson, but there's a lot about Thomas Jefferson too I question. But like I say, I can understand in the study of our founding, George Washington was an incredibly wise man. Though he wrote very little essays, really didn't write a lot of books. But there is quite a lot of letters about, from George Washington in our federal archives where you can get a real good understanding. And in my opinion, he was a man I liked because he was a man, I'm not saying I'm George Washington, but I'm like him. He loved world history. He loved the study of world wars. He loved the study of cultures and societies and how they risen and how they fell. And his whole, like I say, God makes a purpose for everybody. Like, you take for instance, like Egypt came up with the idea of the demigods, and the fallacy of totalitarianism was really founded in ancient Egypt. And Moses, though, you see, God had a plan. Moses would come along and be the guy who would throw the wrench into it. So he would be the smart, good genius who would trample over the bad genius. And it just so happens, you see, only by the will of God could it be that Moses would be born and then wound up being raised by the pharaohs of Egypt in a way where he would have full and everything of knowledge of these people, and then have the somehow something happens for a mishap. He realizes he's of the people who are enslaved, and yet though he's a genius by God, and he has the ability and the zest about him to get people to believe in him, and then God himself allows this man to have great power with miracles, and where people who even don't believe in him fear the man because they realize God's with him, and he was able to free those people and keep the pursuit going forward for that of what would be a republic. Because that's why we're so great an ally with Israel right now, because that they were of the first founding of a republic who broke away from that of totalitarianism and sought to be that of a self-governing free people. And they did that way back then in ancient Egypt. And they still pursue that today among a world that's around them, constantly attacking them and trying to kill them. But yet they can't, because they're greatly protected by God. And in America, we're greatly protected by God. And on those things is where we kind of like, I differ a little bit with Thomas Jefferson. Thomas Jefferson was what you call, if you study, and even George Washington, there's several letters where George Washington refers, in speaking of Thomas Jefferson to others, as the one who pursues his enlightenment, meaning he hasn't found it yet. George Washington knew what he was. George Washington was a straight up Christian, loved God, and James Madison was a straight up Christian, loved God. And and with Thomas Jefferson, both James Madison and George Washington insisted in the Declaration of Independence that he understand that, when he penned the Declaration of Independence, it wasn't just Thomas Jefferson. He was charged with writing it, and he can input his own opinions. And we know what of the quotes in it, like his thing about all men are created equal and endowed by their Creator with certain inalienable rights. He states these things by in the sense of that that, and then nature's laws and nature's God is mentioned in the Declaration of Independence. These were things insisted on by James Madison, George Washington, and several other very strong Christian faith people. And today we have this is all relevant. So I know it might sound like I'm rambling, but I'm not. It's relevant to understanding that we were a Judeo-Christian founded nation, and there's no doubt about it. And that our government was not an authoritarian government, and it definitely was not a democratic democracy. It was a republic. But the thing of it is that you got to understand that as a Christian-founded republic, we were a people of Jesus Christ. We were a people of Christians. And this was a Christian-founded nation. Not so much that, and we would agree even as the republic, as the people, to have church and state separate. And that government would not have any say. That's why in the First Amendment we give the right of protection that Congress can make no law obstructing a church or the freedom of religion or the practice of religion, and they can't do anything to create a kind of law that obstructs that or infringes that right. But the reason with that was because we didn't want to have what we have, like what we see with Egypt or what we see with China. Like Egypt had the demigods with the pharaohs. They were half men, half God. What they did was they wove into society its governing fascist position of totalitarianism, that of religion, and where people would worship the god of that religion, of what's like in Egypt, the pharaoh claimed to be half God, so you had to worship your authority and as God. That's 100% pure. That's the goal of totalitarianism, is to have the whole world fall on its knees as a servant and servitude to that of the great almighty leaders of the totalitarian world, these sicko people who want to rule the world. And that's the ultimate of totalitarianism. We didn't want that in America. So when our government had no reason to have anything to do with religion or anything like that, because it was not there as an authoritarian position. It was there as a service provider, and where we would give it its tasks: build our schools, build our roads, build our ports for shipping and export and import, build the fire department so that communities are safe, appoint the marshals, build the military bases so we have a very strong army. Keep the infrastructure going and manage the budget for the nation. This was the task of government. Americans' government was not to be an authoritarian government, though the traitors within, the Tories, and eventually who became the Democrats in 1828, they would want authoritarianism. You see, the Democrats pursue that of a democratic democracy. They want to have it kind of like it is in the UK. You see, everybody keeps saying, well, the UK is just like America. No, they're not. Big difference when you have a democracy and a republic like America. Big difference when you have, even if they have a constitution under it. You see, you can have in a democracy, you can have a constitution, you can have elections, you can have departments, a House, a Senate, a Congress, a Parliament, like they have, House of Commons, what have you. The similarities between democracy and republican is in the form of operation are nearly identical. The only difference between a democracy and a republic is authoritarianism. In a democracy, authoritarianism rests with that of the elected body of government, or the self-proclaimed body in a democratic democracy, claiming itself as the authority over, like Venezuela or something like that, where you got a dictator, okay, and a democratic democracy like Venezuela, socialist democratic democracy. he's a dictator. And even that, like in the UK, you see, they're just finding this out. Like if you look at Tommy Robinson right now and some of the people in the UK that are out there, Tommy Robinson is a man who's been arrested for freedom of speech and condemning now to the total totalitarian Islamic Muslims who have been raping people and killing people in Great Britain. And him as a Britain man is fed up with it, and he's got a lot of support of the Britain people with him, and as well as people in England and Wales and all of them. They're supporting him like crazy. But you have the Parliament government of the UK locking this man up, shutting him up, issuing court orders on him that he can't talk about actual facts related to these criminal cases of rape against where the Muslims are raping children over there and being convicted for it, but he's not allowed to talk about it because the cowards that are in the UK government over there are not much different than the cowards that are in our government right now. Both Democrat and Republican are freaking nothing but a bunch of cowards. There's a small minority right now of good, strong people that have come in within the last 4 years, but the majority of what exists across this country is a bunch of there's no pussies, just right out. They're freaking cowards, okay? It's disgraceful. And right now, a lot of them, we're finding out, are not even really Republicans. They're goddamn rhinos. They're coming out of the woodwork. The party has been so infiltrated, it's ridiculous. And none of it really stands to any of the true founding principles of what we're talking about as far as the real republic anyway. So it's disgraceful. But back to the point I'm saying, George Washington, if you do your studies on it, and some of the greatest things like the Federalist Letter 10, the 10th Federal by James Madison, really goes into the whole thing that really, I mean, he breaks it down. Because, you'll talk to these historians, and I know because I've done it. I've talked to them, and then I leave these historians sitting there with their head spinning because, I know what I'm talking about, especially because a lot of them, they'll reference the Federalist Papers, and maybe they've read the Federalist Papers, but, they've read, I guess I could say, here's what I understand with a lot of historians. They go and they read the books, right, for the test. They read what's necessary to pass the test to get that degree. I call them educated idiots. All they know is what they were led to know, They never thought outside the box. They never did like the guy Benny. Benny was a smart man, like the guy I was talking about in the diner. Gave me a lot of good direction as a kid on how to learn, okay? He was the man that told me that if you're studying something about a people in history, and they say that the history is written by the victor, so you can't trust the victor. How do you find out what the truth is? He said you go outside that little country and you see what the outside people in other little countries around them said about that era, that time, and those events. And then, if everything lines up with what everybody's saying outside, who have no interest in favoring one way or the other, they're just telling the facts of what they've seen as observers, well, then it's the truth. But, if the guy who you're reading about in history is somebody who says, oh, I was a great this, and we did a great that, and we great this, and then you read the little country next to him, it's like, oh, there was nothing great about it at all, and then you read another little country on the east side, and they're like, oh, nothing about it at all was great, and then the north side, they're like, oh, there was nothing great. You realize this guy's lying. He's just the victor of, and gets to tell the story the way he wants. He's making himself sound great, when everybody else around and outside is like, he was not so great. You get the truth that way. You look for it. You got to seek. You got to find it. But these people who have these degrees, I call them the wizard's degrees, like the Wizard of Oz. You give them a paper brain, okay? And not that I'm against knowledge. I learned everything I learned reading and studying. But you see, knowledge gives you an ability to give you something to go on. It just gives you something to go on. If you want to know how to build a car and you read a book about how to build a car, it gives you an idea of images, pictures of what, but until you actually see how big the motor is, you're like, oh my God, a little book only shows it. That's what I'm saying, wisdom. Wisdom comes with application of knowledge. You got to apply that knowledge, and you got to see if it's feasible and how you're applying it. There's 1,000 ways of doing things wrong. There's very few ways of doing it right. And when you go out into and I'm telling you, I lived a life of self-learning. I've done things all 1,000 ways wrong before finding the few ways of trying to do things right with the things that I've been able to accomplish. I'm still learning, and I still mess up quite a bit. But that's life. Life's a process. So, and I enjoy it though. I don't mind at all. I hope to go through all enduring hell as most of what I can in this world before I leave the world, because whatever comes after it, once I'm done here, so it doesn't matter. You just got to endure it. You got to endure whatever, I guess, life is. Everybody's got their purpose, right? So, but what I'm saying is now, when we look back and we realize that these authoritarians, and then now with the historians and the way they do things and what's going on right now with the Democratic Party hijacking education, They're writing the story the way they want, and they're lying to the posterity of this country. And right now, it's dangerous. It's very, very dangerous because, when you look at world history and you say to yourself, how do nations rise and fall? Well, this is something George Washington knew very well and he feared. When you read the Federalist letters, even with James Madison, who a lot of them, their mentors was, Thomas Jefferson was a mentor to James Madison, and so was George Washington. And these men learned from the geniuses who founded this nation. And they applied what they learned to be wisdom. In the end, in my opinion, James Madison became a lot wiser than Thomas Jefferson. But Jefferson eventually caught up. I mean, I do believe by the time he passed on, he got it. He got it. So it's all good in that sense. But the thing of what it was, you see, we don't need, like, when you have, like, the parliament, like, let me give you an example of what exactly is the purpose of multiple parties. Multiple parties are kind of like what you have going on when you read the ancient tablets of Egypt, the hieroglyphs, and you break them down to basic English. What it is an organization of authority among different provinces, and where the kings, though they appear to the societies as enemies, they're really not. They're best buddies. And they're all in cahoots together. And what happens is, let's say, like, you have a little king in Persia, and you got a king in Egypt, and you got a king in Arabia, and a little guy in Persia pushes the line a little bit too hard. He starts plucking daughters off of the people on the street because he thinks they're cute, and he wants to just take them home and take them as concubines or what have you. And all of a sudden, the people start getting upset, and, they start thinking about hanging this guy because they're like, you're not a very good ruler, and we don't like what you're doing, and you got no morals, no values, you're a perverted sick son of a bitch, and we want to kill you. And now the people start uprising. What does he do? How does these fascists work? See, total totalitarianisms, all of them are together in an alliance. They know in the end it's a cannibalistic existence that all will eat each other until one only exists. That's the ultimate goal of totalitarianism, one ultimate world ruler. That's what their pursuit is. But during the time of getting there, they're ally. So now that he has an uprising of the people, he may go over and send a personal letter, go visit the king of Persia, be like, look, come over next week with a big army of your people. Your population is probably getting a little bit too big right now, and you got to spend too much money on food for these worthless scumbags. So just come on over with a whole bunch of your military guys and attack us, and then let me raise up an army and defend, and then I'll be the hero again. And that's what they do. You see, they create these proxy wars, and when the people rebel, the other allies of theirs come in and cause all kind of chaos and upset, and then that king responds in a way because now the people are concerned about the chaos and upset of an attack from a foreigner, and they're focused on that, and they lose track of what they were going to hang the king, and then the king comes in and does some miraculous thing with his army and his so-called genius, and then that guy decides that there's a negotiation, he's going to back down. Now the guy went from wanting to be hung to being the hero. You see, this is how all governments in the world outside of America work. And Thomas Jefferson, James Madison, George Washington, all of them knew what was going on back then. They all knew. They all knew. They were studiers of world history, especially George Washington. He understood the whole muck of it, how it all worked, like Moses did. Moses caught on to Egypt. He knew he was raised an Egyptian. He knew the tricks of smoke and the mirrors of what they were doing. And, so under George Washington and our founders, they wanted to form America as something that the world had never seen. And in truth, that's what we did. It was something the world never seen, a true republic. A true republic, a self-governing people that would be a government of the people, for the people, and by the people. And that's the other thing. You see, we lost sight. Like, George Washington stepped down after 2 terms. And if you look back, there's history and there's records of this. The King George III had asked about, what do they say he's going to do if he's stepping down? Because he was offered to be king. But George Washington and the founders knew that we didn't want to be a kingdom. We didn't want a monarchy. And they wanted to establish what was their vision of a republic, a true republic. And they knew that only a minority of the people would get it and understand it and keep it. But the majority would probably give it up and throw it away in a heartbeat, was like what we see today happening. The majority of Americans really would. They don't care. They're like, I just go to work tomorrow anyway. It doesn't matter if it's a democratic democracy or a goddamn republic. They don't know nothing. They're ignorant. And like the statement I said here, that's one statement you can see that was from Thomas Jefferson in his quotes. I have somewhere here. Try and find that again. if I can. I had it somewhere. Well, about the ignorance of people. It was in the quotes. Oh, here it is. No people who are ignorant can be truly free. You see, and that's what we have in America right now. Majority of ignorant people. They don't know. They just don't get it, and it's going to be that minority of the very strong, that of our military men, women, and that of the honorable oath keepers of our law enforcement, and that of true patriot Americans who are going to keep this nation as it was intended. But like I'm saying, the other point I'm just trying to say is that we have to pay attention to what's going on. I'm going to include some links in this so people can do their own. But the constitutional framers viewed political parties as necessary evils, and that's true. That's what it was. You know, on some of these things, like George Washington's family had fled England precisely to avoid the civil wars there, while Alexander Hamilton once called political parties the most fatal disease of popular government. James Madison, who worked with Hamilton to defend the new Constitution to the public in the Federalist Papers, wrote in the Federalist 10 that one of the functions of a well-constructed union should be its tendency to break the control of violence and factions. But you see, and what he meant was like multiple parties. We didn't want any parties. We wanted one party, a Republican form of government. And today, it seems that, like I say, ignorance is with the people, because the people don't understand today in America what a Republican is. And this right here, like, even with Thomas Jefferson, when he was asked at the time when they came out with the Constitution, I don't know if this is factual, this is what it says. I've looked in to try and find further evidence. And to be honest with you, there's several newspaper reporters, like it's newspapers back then, that do add credit to the story that a woman approached Thomas Jefferson and asked him, "What, sir, have you given us?" And he said, "A republic, if you can keep it." Now, Thomas Jefferson himself, he was the man who was a big part. He wasn't really there during the Constitution. He was a foreign dignitary that was in, I believe, France at the time. And it was, but he took part as far as giving his insight, his input, and what have you. And he was back for the time of when the Constitution would be ratified. He returned back here, and so I mean he was fully aware of all going on and took his part in it. But he wasn't here during the full process of it. But it was also, like I say, he didn't write the whole Constitution. He was a part of it. And what the founders wanted was a republic. And their vision of that republic was a people government. You see, one nation of all equal. And we understood, you see, when I look at history and I look at the letters and I look at what people are saying to each other, as far as within the founders, not of the Tories or the infiltrators of the Federalist Party or the infiltrators of the Democratic Republic and all these fallacy parties that existed at the time of divisive measures of inward enemies that we had among us trying to cause chaos. Not those, but on the true founding principles of what our founders wanted. They envisioned that, and they understood state rights. You know, Thomas Jefferson was strong towards state rights. James Madison and even George Washington was more about federal centralized. The way Washington seen it was that if we establish a national centralized law, and we're governed of the people, for the people, by the people will keep the order of which they want. Okay, and it would be unified across the nation. Meaning, if you say you can't ride a blue horse on Sunday in New Jersey, well, the whole entire nation of all other 49 states have to agree with that law before it can become law. Meaning, you can't subject any one American to a law that isn't approved by the Constitution of the whole of the United States. This is what they envisioned. But in the founding of it, you understand, this was theory. So a lot of people were kind of in opposition to the centralized government. It was something new. No one ever did this before. You know, so you can understand in some senses the fear. And then too, and the majority of it wasn't fear. The majority of it was that of foreign infiltration and enemies among us who did not want us succeeding in independence, because, you know, Great Britain didn't really want to give us up. And they were kind of figuring, which we know by the War of 1812, let's give it a little time for them to settle down, try to figure out the size of the army, replenish our military, and we'll give it another shot at another time, and we'll keep the Tories in there so we have an inside ally to help us when we decide to return, like they did in 1812. Britain attempted to attack and overthrow us again in the Second Revolutionary War, and the goddamn British Tories, who were here among us, the enemies, helped and aided them again in that war. So, I mean, and then, like I say, these are the people who became the Democratic Party. Now, when you read these fallacies here about the Democratic Republican Party, and, you know, you go forward about stories like here, when you see this here, and I even have some other stories like here. This is one from the History Channel, and the Sarah Pruitt. When you read this, obviously Sarah Pruitt, she's from Connecticut, I believe. I did some looking into her. She's a leaning left Democrat, I believe, because you can tell by the way this story is written, because she's written it in the way of all the indoctrination by the Democratic Party's fallacy and lies to history. She has America as a democracy and as a democratic nation and how democratic republic and all this stuff. I mean, it's just crazy, but you know, it might not be her fault because, like I say, we've allowed the Democrats to infiltrate all levels of our education department and social and civil matters, including social programming and whatever. This is how they've been able to seize so much control in this country. Because, you know, the fallacy is that these people are the social warriors for immigrants and minorities, but that's not true. They use that as a crutch to gain power. That's all it's about. You know, the black people in this country, the immigrants in this country, to the Democrats are nothing but a positioning pawn in the game of trying to manipulate a majority electoral position by major cities across the states. That's all it is. They don't care about the people. This should be pretty self-evident right now. And what they do, though, is they use the people, the same as they've always done. When you look back, like, you talk about James Madison, like, one of the things I wanted to look in, he was a guy who did the first, like, laws in where you couldn't degrade the government, you couldn't speak badly about the American founding principles, you couldn't speak bad about the Republic. And the reasons why he did these things with establishing that law back then was because you had the Tories, and they had like the Whig parties, and they had the Democratic Republic Party. There was a Democratic Republic Party at that time, I believe, out of Switzerland or England. It didn't exist in America, but these guys, you know, and what they were was divisive parties of like fascist kind of establishments under what happens with democratic democracies for the purpose of what I'm telling you. You see, like, most nations want multiple parties. That way there's always something to misdirect the public to when they get, like, ready to attack the government. You know, even like right here in America, right? When we start looking at the issues going on, like you take a couple months back, people were getting really fed up with the rioting, the looting, all the traffic blocking, the idiocy going on, and they knew it was so right away. But whether the Democrats are the very ones who are doing it, it's happening in their district, it's their constituency that's behind and pushing it, but yet they blame the Republicans, you see? And then the problem is, like my uncle used to say, the hardest thing to prove is something that's not there. You see, so the Democrats know they blame the Republicans, but there's no evidence, there's no facts to support it. It becomes like a thing that, you know, they're like, well, you know, they're just saying it, so we just got to believe it because we're Democrats. It doesn't matter. And that's where, like, you get back with Joe Biden and Harris with their statement about, you know, they believe the truth, not the facts. You know, and then too, like I say, with that, what that comes down to is a fascist ideology of like totalitarian or Nazism or communism. You see, that communist totalitarianism understands, like the pharaohs understood, and the dictators of like China understand right now, and the dictators of like even Putin in Russia. But you know, he's a nationalist, more or less, communist nationalist. He's not. I wouldn't put him on the same scale as China as far as totalitarianism, but you know, he's still a communist nation. But these guys understand that if you can divide the people and keep them in a chaotic state, and where every time you do something wrong and they start focusing at you, you can use another fascist party or another political party that you can blame, and that party will take the blame. They operate the same as what I told you before about that little story about how you would have a king in Persia and a king in Arabia, and say the guy in Arabia does something, now he pushes it too far, and the people are ready to uprise and want to overthrow him. He calls his buddy over in Persia. Persia sends an army and they attack them, and now the people are more focused on the war and this attack going on. They forgot all about the king and hanging this guy, and they're all worried about the war because you got the Persians coming in, slaughtering people in the streets and this, that, and then he sends out a big army And he coordinates the army, and then he goes and meets with the king and negotiates this treaty, and then all of a sudden everybody retreats, and the whole community's back to peaceful, and now he's a hero, you see? And that's how it goes. And that's the same way it happens with these political fascists, why they want multiple parties. The problem in America, though, as far as what's been going on for the last 244 years, is that the Republican Party hasn't been complicit for the majority of our history in that kind of complicity, and where we would work with them on those grounds, but we have been recently, probably I'd say in the last 20 years, and in fact it's the last 20 years, and this has happened because of rhinos, Republican in name only, and it starts with the Bush family, because the Bushes, as we know right now, they're cuddling up with the Clintons and them and the Democrats. They're over there with the Democrats. They were rhinos. They always were rhinos, and they were never real Republicans. They never had a vision of the greedy, no good scumbags, self-proclaimed elitists, bastards, treasonous scumbags is what they are. And what they got away with is just I can tell you something about with the Bush family that goes into hundreds of millions of dollars involved with George Bush Sr. and Dick Cheney with that small little oil cabinet company called Boots and Coats. And how they robbed the American public of hundreds of millions of dollars with the creating the proxy war with Iraq. I mean, it's just phenomenal, and they got away with it. They got away with it because, like I say, war is war, and people are distracted by the war. Nobody's paying attention to the man behind the curtain. And boy, the Bushes were with the Clintons behind that curtain. I'll tell you that during that stuff going on with Iraq. But these were rhinos, and I can remember, like I said in other videos, back in that time. I knew people where I said, I don't trust George Bush Sr. and I don't trust George Bush Jr. I remember back even when I was a younger man, I said that I believed the attempted assassination on Ronald Reagan was coordinated by George Bush Sr. because he was a goddamn rhino. And he reminded me of Andrew Johnson. I said, that's what he is. He's a freaking rhino like Andrew Johnson. And he wanted to have Reagan killed so he could get in because the Democrats are all in cahoots with him. And they got a plan that's all about just self-serving them and getting political power and power over the nation to do their will of what they want. And they've been wanting to do because they're the enemies within. And people back then telling me I was crazy. And I know some of those people right now can't even look me in the eye, because I remember when the Bushes went running over to the Clintons right now on the Democrat side, I can remember seeing two of those people and looking at them, and I said, hey, did you see George Bush and his son, them over there with the Republicans? They went to the Democratic side, and they looked at me like, oh, I couldn't believe it. I was like, yeah, what are you? Oh, yeah, and they put their head down and they walk away. But, you see, and it's not that I'm anything special or whatever, it's just I had the common sense of reasonable understanding from Andrew Johnson. This guy was the father of rhinos, and you can see, like they say, an orange is orange. Don't try and make it purple. You see what you see. You know what I mean? When you see what you see, you accept what you're looking at. That's what it is. Okay? Don't try to let clouding things come in. See things as what they are, and what the facts say they are, and accept the truth of what they are. That's just the way it is. If you want to know what's really going on, just accept the truth of what it is. Because even with right now, all the confoundment that's going on, it's really not that big. It's not. You got to understand that the whole thing that's going on right now is, in truth, in practical truth, we shouldn't be so concerned as the people, because you know what? We are the authority. This government is already, everybody right now, for the majority within the Democrats, are so complicit in treason and acting outside the consented to authority and powers. They literally are in contempt of the Constitution and their elected positions to a point they have no authority and power. The sedation acts are gone, okay, to the extent of what some of them are doing. You take that governor of Michigan, that's just crazy what she did with having the state police block elected officials and electors from going in to the House when the vote was taking place for the Electoral College. And who the hell are the state of police, and what authority do they have to become a political, like they were like the Gestapo Nazis? Really, that's exactly how that state police officer was acting, as the Gestapo Nazis. And he had complicit Nazi little Gestapo officers with him. This shows you the ignorance of people. Now, these people within all government positions must take an oath to uphold and defend the Constitution above all things. Mind you, we the people have to understand that when such is happening, and they do take that oath, and then they act as clear right there in public in front of us. That day when that state trooper did what he did, the costume no longer matters. The badge no longer matters. Once you're in contempt of the Constitution, all authority is gone. You are now just a clown in a goddamn uniform. Okay? And that's how he should have been viewed. Those people had no reason to have to grant him, because he had no authority to be where he was doing what he did in the first place. This is not old Nazi fucking Germany where we got Gestapo political police who can favor to one side of a political party over another and help and be complicit and assisted through legal laws under the color of law, the Constitution, acting unconstitutional in a one-sided way. That's not allowed in this country. But that's exactly what that state cop was doing in Michigan. And that's exactly what the governor of Michigan ordered him to do. Both parties, and this is what I say about like complicity, it rests with the Republicans as well, because there's a Republican establishment in Michigan. Why not? Where's the order an order or motion of impeachment for this governor on this? Because these are serious things. These are things I can assure you. Back in the founding times, these people would be hung for this. They would be hung in public. They would be executed by a firing squad, at least, for what they're doing right now, because it would be acts of treason. And back in the founding times, had a governor done what that person did with a state, both the governor and the state cop would be hung in public, because it's treason. It's against the Constitution. These people are literally self-condoning unto themselves. They're self-appointing themselves an authority higher than that of the people in the Constitution. They're trying to coup us the people. And they're acting in abuse of their consented to powers and authority way over that line to the point that they're in contempt so bad they really don't have it. In all honesty and truth, the militia in Michigan right now should be marching up to remove the governor of Michigan, and as well going to the state police and removing that captain or corporal, whoever the hell he was, because obviously that man doesn't understand the Constitution he took an oath to. That's clear in effect. He has no authority to be acting as what he was. There's no, and then the idiocy of when you watch the video of that guy talking about how, he don't want to get in a political argument with the guy. He's taking a political position, but he don't want to get in a political argument. He's enforcing under the color of law as a constitutional officer who is acting in contempt of the Constitution by picking sides of a political position, and where he is in favor of using the law to defend one side over that of the other, but yet he don't want to have a political argument. You understand what I'm saying, right? You get that, don't you? I mean, I'm not the only one who sees it, and I know I'm not the only one who sees it. A lot of people are upset about this because we all seen it. We all seen it. And I just don't understand how come the Republicans are filing a motion right now for impeachment on her to have her removed. I don't understand how the president even right now, Donald Trump, somebody needs to inform him, because it's the first time he's president, and I know he's a smart man, but he has to realize too, under Article 4, Section 4, Mr. President, the federal Constitution guarantees to every state in the Union a Republican form of government, and to protect the people from domestic violence. You're waiting on the governor to call you for the National Guard. You're waiting on the governor to ask for your assistance in these riots. You don't need their consent. You're the President of the United States. None of their state laws supersede that of the federal Constitution. The Constitution guarantees to every state in the Union a Republican form of government and a protection against domestic violence. You have a right to, whenever the American people in any damn state are being attacked by that of a Democratic goddamn governor's will of literally defunding or trying to tell the police to stand down and allowing this destruction of private property of that of the citizens, you have a right automatically under Article 4, Section 4 to send in a National Guard, the military, or raise up the militia, which we are really hoping you do. That's what we really would like for you to do. Call on us to deal with this, because we would love to have the Civil War again and wipe these son of a bitches out and get it done like like Lincoln tried to do in the Wade Davis Act, because these people have been the enemies within now for 155 years, and they've been doing nothing but destroying and dividing this country for 155 years. And today they've got the youth and the posterity in this country so goddamn confounded, and they're manipulating all the systems of education. They're manipulating online with lies and deception and twisted versions of history, all trying to make it seem that what they're saying is complicit with the history of our nation, when it's not. We have to get back to the true roots. A lot of people, like today, you ask these Democratic of the society of public, and they go, oh, well, you're a conservative. You're damn right I'm a conservative. You're damn right. Because let me tell you something. There is no greater nation in the world than America. There's no greater establishment than the Constitution of the United States of America. There's nothing greater than a Republic of America. Because we're the only goddamn one ever in this world, and we're the only one that ever made it in history for 244 years. Okay? We're the only truly self-governing people on the earth, on the whole entire planet. Everybody else is some kind of form of a democratic democracy of totalitarianism. This is the only place. And well, if you don't understand as an American who you are, what your principles and values are, that we are one people of all equal as the Americans. We are the highest of authority in this country. And you, if you are saying that you want to give authority to the government, you're a goddamn idiot. You don't understand American values and principles or that of the American founding. And you know what? In the truth, if you do understand it and that's what you want, pack your shit and leave. You got the right to pursue the happiness. Nobody's holding you back. Go to Venezuela. Go to Venezuela. See what it's really like in your dumb little fantasy world of your utopia bullshit. Really, go see what it's like. Because I'm going to tell you right now, we're sick of it. We're sick of it. And what it is sadly too, because I'll tell you what, in a lot of the Democratic-controlled cities where the minorities and the immigrants are, it's very, very sad. Because, you know, I've known a lot of people in my life, and I know people right now. I know people, and I can say, and amaze me in the last 4 years, because this year I'm returned back to, like, the majority of my Democratic customers, they were all voting for Trump. And, we've had debates. I've always been civil in conversation. I would not turn somebody away because they're a Democrat, because I realize most of them are Democrat name only, out of ignorance. They don't even know the truth. But I would drop the seeds for them to follow. And I would say to them, well, this is why I'm a Republican, and you're a Democrat, why? And then they usually don't have an answer to why. Outside of, well, you know, and then when you tell them some of the truths of the Democratic Party, you're like, oh, are you sure that sounds like the Republicans? I'm like, no, that's the Democrats. And then they look into it. Next thing I know, I go back and they say, you know, I switched to the Independent Party because I looked into it and I didn't realize who the Democrats really were, and that's not who I am. And then most of them right now, they see it. Like when we had to stop the Steele rally last month, not so much this time, last month, one of the most amazing things I seen when I was off on my own for the little brief moments I was, where I got to talk to people who were there, was I ran into a massive crowd of Democrats who support Trump. And it was amazing because they were, you know, when I asked, I was like, why? What made you? They were like, well, you know, there's abortion at birth, and they got the kids so confused, they don't know what bathroom to use, and all this stupid binary you know, so you realize that just because a person's a Democrat, maybe they're ignorant to the truth of what that is, but that doesn't mean they've lost all humanity. There's a lot of them, they have humanity, they have American values and principles, they just misaligned and misunderstood who actually supports and stands for them. Which is understandable, because like I say too, even in the Republican Party right now, which lately I have not been much active in the actual government, I guess, official Republican parties, because they're all fake. They're just fake people. Most of them are a bunch of political pundit asses, educated idiots, just sitting in elected positions or looking to get into elected position to get their high-paid welfare check. They don't have a damn clue. They don't care. They don't really care. Some of them, they're no different than Democrats, are the most despicable goddamn people you could ever imagine coming across. They're inhumane. They're inhumane. They don't care about nobody but themselves. Republican, Democrat politics, it's just disgusting, the disgracefulness of where we got. Our founders wanted a government of the people, for the people, by the people. We had envisioned an establishment of which, when you read the Federalist letters and you read the letters, personal letters between Thomas Jefferson, James Madison, George Washington, you get the idea of what they wanted. They envisioned that, men would be like George Washington. You would dedicate a term or 2 terms, 8 years, 4 or 8 years to your government, share your wisdom and knowledge, do your duty and your service, and then retire back to what it was you did for a living as a regular American. You see, George Washington, he went back to his farm, and what I was saying earlier, I never finished. King George said, what will he do? And he was told that George Washington said he's going back to Mount Vernon, he's going to go back to his farm. And King George said if he does that, he'll be the greatest man known in history, because in truth, if he did that, well, he's a man who walked away from being king of the world, because after we took Great Britain, pretty much we were the world's most feared nation. And there was a reason, too. It's another thing I want to get into. There's a reason for that, and that was because we were, a Christian-founded nation, of which, real quick, too, I just want to show of something here in relation to what I'm saying. I did this. I put this up in another. This is an actual letter translated from the Muslim Islamic states back in the time of James Madison. And what it says here is, to His Majesty, the Emperor of America, its adjacent and dependent province, and whatever his government may extend, our noble friend, the support of kings of nations of Jesus. This is what this is how they viewed us. The pillar of all Christian sovereign. This is how we were addressed by foreign nations in the world during the time of James Madison. Now, I have in here about James Madison in Virginia. He had entered a bill. Madison deterred a bill that established Christianity as a Virginia state religion. And in truth, we were founded, and now Thomas Jefferson, and we did want to keep church and state separate. But we had to also recognize that the majority of our laws were based upon that of nature, the laws of nature and nature's God. So God had a relevancy in play. And when you look at Christianity, Christianity has a rule of moral society rules that are in line to that of the laws of nature and nature's God. So, it would be a moral religion principle to follow. There's very, not so much in the corrupt of it and the different, because even with religions, when you have a religion that's like Christianity and the truth of Jesus Christ and what it was founded on the morals and values of the principles that really underlie the social structure of family, unity, brotherhood, loving one another, compassion for one another, aiding and assisting and helping one another as a unified people. When the world sees something like that, especially totalitarian rulers, that's not a good thing either. So they actually they try to divide that religion up. And then you got to wonder, how could you have so many different sects of a religion? Like in Christianity, you got Protestant, Methodist, you got all kind of Episcopal, Pentecostal, you name it. There's all these different names, and pretty much it's the same thing what happens with governments. When you divide up a religion into so many different fascist kind of groups, well, the religion kind of loses its foundation. It loses its purpose. And as we see here in America today, within all those fascist groups, then you have now it's a lot of shysters, a lot of people get rich off it, a lot of people just use it as a thing to prey on people, and it's just disgraceful. The true founding principle of the morals and the values of it as a society are very far and few to find anymore in America, but they do still exist. There is still a large minority of great God-fearing, God-loving Americans. Thank God. I know I met over 300,000 of them when I was in Washington, D.C. It was the greatest day of my life. But, it's good to know there's that minority is still out there. And, but like I'm saying, when you look at this, you realize that, and you look at this right here, like I'm saying, this is how, when you look at old letters that were sent to our presidents, they always, many nations referred to us as the noble kings of the nations of Jesus Christ. And they are our Christian sovereign nation of America, or the Christian sovereign United States. You see this in many, for the whole founding time and era, all the way up until the 1900s, where we're referred to these things. And when questioned about it to the government, though there would be some statements, like James Madison, even though he stood very strong to these values and principles of Christianity, when asked by the D of Arabia, is the government of America of Jesus? And he said, no, the people are, but the government, no. The government has no religion. And, today you get atheists and you have satanic worshipers, and including Democrats, try to say, oh, you see, James Madison said right here that, America's not a Christian. No, he didn't say America wasn't a Christian-founded nation. He said the government's not Christian. And the government's not Christian. It's not Christian, it's not Buddhist, it's not Jewish, it's not Hindu. It's none of them. The government is nothing but a service provider. It's a service department. It has no religion. It has no real authority or say over anybody or anything in this country. It's only there at the will of the people. And when the government starts acting like an authoritarian like it is right now, we the people take that power and consent of power away from them and put them back in their place. That's what we should be doing. You know, when you look at some of the things that are happening right now, it's scary. But I'm going to tell you what. We the people of the true minority, because it's what we are. We're a minority. It's not the majority. The majority of people really don't care. It's no different than the founding times. It's going to be a small percentage. But if we have 3% right now of this current population, that's more than enough. And I don't even think we need that much. And what I'm understanding, I believe we have an army, probably 8.3 million right now is what we're estimating among all the patriot groups and militia groups across the country, with all the people who come forward in the last 10 years and said they would be, you know, Minutemen and they would actually do it and what have you, 8.3 million. And we probably don't even need that many people, which I'm sure out of them there's a lot of people who won't be doing anything. But, you know, it's not going to, we don't need that many people anyway, because the minority who has maintained, all the former military are as well included with that. So understand, and they're badass. You know, you don't want to mess with the people who put their life on the line. I know for a fact the people who put their life on the line for this country, they're not playing around. They didn't go over there and almost die or put their life at risk too, where they could have died, protecting the freedom and liberty back here in Earth. They were over in foreign goddamn countries fighting the totalitarians and the totalitarian indoctrinated societies face to face with these inhumane freaking people, dealing with the insanity that they had to witness over there with the ugly of war and just the inhumanity of the rules in different countries and how they play out and what they do is just, it's sick. It's totally sick. And I say that from wisdom as well, because I had a big spell in my life, 20 years, where I worked with as a civilian with a team of pedophile hunters and human trafficking, trying to stop human trafficking. And we had many times where we were involved in something where we got to see the inhumanity, and several times where I got to go across the border into Mexico and see what goes on with actually real life with the cartels is just inhumane. You know, things that even horror movies can't even touch on. Like I looked at the movie that Sylvester Stallone made right prior to this election about the issues going on with human trafficking in Mexico, and the things he depicted in there, and it shows the brutality. You know, I hear people like, oh, he really showed the brutality. I got news for you. What he showed in that movie and what he exampled in that movie is nothing compared to the true brutality of inhumanity of what these cartels will do to people over in Mexico and in like places like Venezuela even, and and like Russia. And I mean, I don't know about Russia, but I know in Mexico what I've seen. I know, and I'll tell you what, the inhumanity is beyond the majority of this nation's comprehension. To even think that somebody could be so inhumane with what they will do to people is sick. It's just sick. And that kind of sickness and inhumanity does create a fear. And it does allow for corruption, and it does allow for that of those people who are evil and able to do those things to gain control and power with those who are afraid of them. And this is where we've had the problem going on along our southern border for a long time, and where we even got the problem going on with our own government, because these people have been threatening our government for decades now. And the people who are complicit with them are the Democrats. The Democrats are right up there with them. They're really the runners of all this perversion and sickness going on with pedophilia and freaking brothel houses and prostitution and poverty and drugs and what have you. You look, all the Democratic cities and districts, pretty much they're the place where all that goes on. You know, and they're very complicit with it. They don't really care because, like I say, these are inhumane people as well in our own government, of the Democrats for the majority, and as well as Republicans. A lot of them are, but the Republicans are not among a society and where they're actually creating the very issues. The Democrats are actually creating the very issues that are causing American society to suffer. They're intentionally doing what they're doing. And this is what they've been doing now for 5 decades. And they're actually longer than that. They've been doing it since the 1920s. They go and they create an issue and a problem with a minority in society or an immigrant minority in society. Then they present themselves as the social hero to the resolve of the very problem they themselves are causing. You know, and it's been going on like this now for the last 150 years with these people. And yet today, it amazes me how ignorant society is. Now, today, when I was younger, to learn a lot of what I know, took hard copy. I had to sit in the library for like hours upon hours reading hard copy books, finding those books, researching those books, and then going out finding more books to fact check the very facts of what I read to make sure, because all history is washed. It's washed in a way where the guy who's writing it writes it the way he wants to believe it happened. Very few accounts do you find in history of where it's just like some guy who is doesn't give a damn about his own opinion and just writes it out as like it really happened, if he agrees with it or he don't. That would be real history. And me, I'm that guy. I'm that guy. That's the way I always looked at it. I don't give a damn about being the victor and writing the spoils to my benefit. I just want to know the truth. That's all I care about. I just want to know the truth of what's really going on and what really happened. And that was always my focus. God's given me this wisdom that, you will always be able to prove a lie to be a lie with the truth. But you can never prove the known truth to be a lie with a lie, because the truth will always reveal the lie. Use that philosophy in all that you look out for in life. And don't follow the idiocy of, right now, Joe Biden and Harris would believe the truth, not the facts. Choose the truth, not the facts. Because, again, what I'm going to say about that is that's totalitarian method, like I started to say before. And what that is like Hitler knew, the Islamic Muslims know with their totalitarian regime, China knows that if you can convince the people that something is the truth and deprive them access or ability to find the facts that disprove it and show it really what it is and prove it's a lie, they're going to believe it's the truth. If they have nothing that's graspable that will make them question, and they've been indoctrinated or dumbed down, and where they don't have an understanding beyond ability to see through it, what they're being told is what they're going to believe. You see? And that's what the Democrats are trying to do right now. That's what they're directing their society, of their constituency, of the youth of the Democrats. And you see, it's a sad thing what we're looking at right now, and even I see it sad. Like, I know just past weekend they had the current event that took place in Washington, and it's all over the news about now, how the Trump supporters clashed with the Antifa and Black Lives Matter and all this. And the sad thing I say about that is I can remember in the 70s these things going on with then the Nation of Islam 5%er gangs and the skinhead Nazis. And back then, though, I was able to see from history knowledge, I understood what was going on, how this was just an inward created issue by people trying to redirect or cause division. You see, and when you realize in truth, when you look at this, it's sad, because you have a group of patriot Americans going and attacking ignorant Americans who have been dumbed down by that of an enemy within, who has made that of the American posterity, as if not disadvantaged enough to be born in poverty-stricken, disgusting Democratic Party ghettos and be deprived of all the blessings of America, and they think that all the world's a hell of what they grew up in, and they don't realize there's a world outside of that democratic hell, but that's all they know. And now they got us divided and fighting against each other, and that's the attention. You see, that's the distraction. Everybody's attention now is on those things. Nobody's paying attention to what the man behind the curtain's doing. And the man behind the curtain right now is trying to steal the nation. The Democratic Party is trying to steal the nation. They're trying to coup us, the American people, through a corrupt election. And I don't give a damn what anybody says. Facebook, like I said in my other video, you can't tell me. You look at Facebook right now, you look at Twitter and all these other places, and the talking heads on the news, like I said in my last video, they're all talking about how, voter fraud's uncommon. Oh, voter fraud, it's rare, it's this, that. We got 154 years of records of nothing but voter fraud in every goddamn election. And the funny thing about it is, when you actually do the indulgence of research into that record, you find out 99.9% of all the people committing voter fraud are freaking Democrats. The Democrats. But, to me, I knew this anyway, because they've been the enemies within since we founded this country. They're still the enemies within. They're always going to be the enemies within until we remove them from this country. And that's what's got to happen. We need to remove the Democrats. We need to return to our roots of our conservative principles and values as one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all, as the great republic we established this nation to be. And understand, all you people who are Democrats, the republic is we the people, not a government party, not a government. We the people are the government. And by us allowing political fascist parties to divide us like football teams fighting each other, we lose the unity of one people of all equal, and we become a divided people. That's their goal, and they're winning. And you're freaking allowing them to win. You're allowing them to win because you're complicit with it. You don't even know your own constitutional. Look up Article 4, Section 4, and understand this is a republic. And the only rightful and allowed consented form of government is a republic, because we're the people. We're the government. You understand? We're not giving that up. We're not going to give up our republic for a democracy, or democratic democracy. It's not going to happen. We're not going to be ruled over like peasants to a goddamn king with a government of self-appointed elitism like Barney Sanders and Joe Biden and freaking Harris want with their freaking authoritarianism. It's not going to happen. It's just not going to happen. And you don't really want it to happen. If you have any common sense about you don't want it to happen. And I'll tell you what, I know for a fact the minorities don't want it to happen. Especially the black minority in America. Because you're talking the Democratic Party who right now has infiltrated into our country, that of the totalitarian Islamic Muslims, who I challenge any black American right now, go on a goddamn computer, go to YouTube, and look up slavery in the Muslim countries, and understand that there's black and white slavery still ongoing in the Islamic countries, but the majority of the slaves are black Africans. Okay, Democrats, while you're at it, go look up the Democratic, because I don't know how many of you Democrats are aware that the Democratic Party is the founders of the Confederate slave states. The Democratic Party was founded as a pro-slavery party. It was fighting for the rights of slave owners to keep their slaves and for the right to expand slavery across the country. When they seceded from the Union and formed the Democratic Confederacy of the Confederate slave states, they drafted their own constitution. And in that constitution, the Democrats stated that it made it a constitutional law that anyone born black, African descent, is born a slave. And that nobody could infringe the right to own a slave in this country. And when the Democrats swear to an allegiance to the Constitution, they're not swearing to the United States Republic's Constitution. They're swearing to that of the Democratic Party's Confederate Slave States Constitution. And I'm telling you right now, and give a damn what anybody says, that's a fact. These people are all right now, they've gone from being out in your face, marching down the street with their hoods on as the Ku Klux Klan, to now political putting a suit on and sitting in government playing all of you as front friggin' runner fools is what's going on. And it's a damn fact. That's a damn fact. If you think that the bullshit that they talk about that LBJ, Lyndon B. Johnson, was some kind of civil rights hero and society's savior, that's just full of, it's not true. But, I'm going to leave off with that. And like I say, I'm just going to leave links to all this here. People need to start doing a little bit of research. And I don't like the idea, like I say, you see this Democratic Republican Party co-founded the Democrat, and they're putting Thomas Jefferson in. Look, I'm going to say, like I said to the guy who is off of Wikipedia, show me one memorabilia thing of history where Thomas Jefferson ever had anything on any ticket where he ran for election or any poster that said Democratic Republic. Show me one. Just show me any memorabilia from that era that says Democratic Republican associated to that of the American government or Thomas Jefferson, James Madison, George Washington, any of them during the time when you say this goddamn bullshit existed. Because it didn't exist. It's exactly as like what this fella put right here with the disambiguation. That it's the Democratic Republican Party is a modern name that's been made up right now by the Democrats and for the purpose of trying to associate Democratic position with that of the Republic founding. Which doesn't exist. It's bullshit. The only reference to anything Democratic back then was the people who founded the Democratic Party was the British toilet self-proclaimed friggin' scumbag elitists who were the majority of slaveholders and rebellious enemies within in this country. That's who they are. Okay, and they were the ones trying to divide. They infiltrated the Federalist Party. They infiltrated the Republican Party. They started like the Whigs Party. And there was a Democratic Republican Party, but it wasn't here. It was, I believe, in either Wales or England, but it wasn't here. It wasn't here. They did have one back then. It was a fascist party that took place in England that was rising up against the king, but it had nothing to do with America. But the British loyalists here may have been part of that. I don't know. But they're the ones who always were causing the divisive division back then. But these things have to be stopped. The posterity and the youth of America need to know the truth. They have a right to know the truth about our founding principles, who we are as Americans, and as far as the adults. What I was saying before I change direction again, like I do often, because mind you too, none of this is scripted with me. I sit down, I think about what I want to do as a movie, a video, and I pull up information to support what I'm saying, so that, and then I get some people too, they go, oh, well, you got to find everything online. Look, you idiot. If I'm doing this online in a video, and we're on the internet, you're going to be watching this on the internet, is there a way for you to reach through your screen and me give you a goddamn hard copy book? No. That's why I do it with websites, okay? We're on the freaking internet. And I understand there's a lot of false information on the internet, but there's also a lot of real. Like I said, you got to use common sense and, verify things Fact check things. Don't listen to Harrison Biden about just believing what you're told. Fact check it. Make sure it's true. Do some digging. Do some research. Do some R&R. Because you know what? Ignorance of the law in this country is no excuse. Ignorant of knowing your place as an American is no excuse. Our posterity counts on us being able to teach them the truth. To secure this republic is what it was founded. We must know the truth of our republic. So learn the goddamn truth. And if you don't want to learn the truth, then you're one of the majority who's just an ass sitter who don't really care and is going to benefit from the minority who's going to go out and put their life on the line like everybody does anyway. Because, there's only a minority of our military right now defends this nation and blesses us all with the great freedom and liberty we have. They're a minority. That the whole majority benefits from their sacrifice. But they're the ones truly deserving of it. There's a big majority of us don't even deserve that goddamn blessings we get from these people because we wouldn't even be willing. There's so many of Americans wouldn't even be willing to risk themselves like these men and women of our military do. And that of the good, honorable law enforcement in our country among the oath keepers and the constitutional officers, the sheriffs and what have you, that are good people who actually put their life on the line and would literally die defending what they believe in that Constitution. But there's also a massive, massive amount of disgraceful, inhumane, disgusting, treasonous, goddamn traitor Americans that are within all of it, including Republicans and Democrats. It's just disgraceful. But I'm going to leave off with that, and I'll put links to all this stuff here. My point was about that America is a republic. I like this paper here. It was written pretty good. It's distinguishing between a democracy and a republic, and also points out all the notes of things of what I'll include here, so that you can understand that when you're reading this, you have links here that you can verify all this within the Federal Archives buildings by actual evidence that we have in the Federal Archives that you can see with your own eyes, like the picture I'm showing you up there. And two, like I say right here, one of the things I just wanted before I go about with Thomas Jefferson, when we was talking about Jefferson, when I said that, because I had this argument with historians, and they say, well, you can't really question Thomas Jefferson now. And I said, I can question Jefferson. I wouldn't question George Washington because, man, he was a studier. He knew what he was talking about. He understood the reason Washington won was because he was a man who studied world wars. He studied world civilization and the wars and the rise and the falls of nations like nobody did before, and he got it. He was like genius in a way where he got what was the mechanism of winning and conquering from what he understood. He not only had the knowledge, he actually had the true ability to apply that knowledge to wisdom and form this great nation we're so blessed to have right now by God. You know what I'm saying? That's what we have right now. You can't say George Washington wasn't a genius. He took knowledge that he knew of world history of the rise and fall of nations, and he made the greatest nation in the world by applying that knowledge and making it real. You understand that? Him I can't question, but Thomas Jefferson I can question because I'm going to show you right here why I can question him. When you look here, George Washington didn't have too much of a knowledge of understanding the Islamic Muslims. This was going on during a time when we realized that the Muslims were the enemies of our enemies, and they were trying to start war with us. They were capturing our slips, enslaving our people because of their idiocy of their totalitarianism. And George Washington was understanding what was going on with it, and he had sent Thomas Jefferson to do some research on this and to figure out what was going on. This is between a letter to the ambassador who answered Jefferson, wrote that it was written in their Quran that all nations who should not have acknowledged their authority were sinners, that it was their right and duty to make war upon them wherever they could be found and to make slaves of all they could take as prisoners. Now, you have Barack Obama once tell you that Thomas Jefferson had the Quran because he was maybe considering, he's friends with the Muslims. That's not true. He had that Quran because he was studying our enemies. And this is a fact during that time and Thomas Jefferson knew the Muslims were our enemies. He knew that our founding fathers agreed that they were the enemies. Matter of fact, George Washington, which I'm not going to just say it, I'm going to show it to you. George Washington himself said that the Muslims were the enemies to mankind. In this letter here, in response to getting information from Thomas Jefferson, speaking with one of the ambassadors out of England, Washington is writing in this letter, and he says to this guy in reference to the Muslims, would to the heavens we had a navy able to reform these enemies to mankind or crush them into non-existence. Pretty much he wanted to wipe them off the earth because they were rising up to be, and we know even from like the Crusades, these people were, and they're responsible today for the death and murder of over 300 million people in the pursuit of their totalitarian ideology, and these people are the enemies to mankind. That's what they are, and they've always been the enemies to America. I don't know how. Well, I can tell you how, because the Democrats have always been the enemies within, and it's through the Democratic Party that Islamic Muslims now are infiltrating our country and taking up positions within our departments of education, within our police departments, within local cities and communities, within our own government, the House of Congress, and the Senate. Now understand, I respect 100%, as our Constitution was founded on the right to the freedom to practice religion. I do not, though, consent to a church and state of a foreign government being one, and thus happen to respect the religion when it can't be separated from the government. And that's what we're dealing with when we look at the totalitarian regime of the Islamic States. Now, if you go to Arabia, and you go to Iran, and you go to Iraq, and you go to Qatar, these places all have a constitution. That constitution happens to be the Quran of Islam. That's their constitution. They're all Islamic nations. The nation, the government, the church, the people are forced by law of the government to pray to Allah and worship Allah of the Quran of Islam. It's a national religion. The government is the religion. The only difference between Islam and Egypt, and where the Pharaoh was claiming to be a demigod, is that the imams and the Islamic leaders don't claim to be half man, half God. They just claim to be the authority of God through God. So, and they order that the people worship them in that authority by that Quran. So this is a foreign government's constitution and law, a foreign nation's law. So a Muslim coming to our country, he can say, well, that's my God. No, well, that might be your God, but your God is also your foreign origin country. That's your law, your way of life. And when you come here to America, you have to assimilate. And in America, we have freedom of religion. We don't kill people. We don't have slavery. We don't have incest. We don't have bestiality where we have sex with animals. We don't molest children. We don't agree with that you can marry a 9-year-old little girl and rape her. That's just pathetic. That's just insane. And it's inhumane. But these are things that you believe and you condone. Now you can say, oh, well, I don't. You're believing that. That's what you worship. If you're a Muslim, that's what you worship. And that's not by the order of God. That's by the order of the laws of your nation that you came from. Now, if your nation was what you were fleeing, and you were coming here to flee that oppression, I can show you Muslims who left the Islamic States because they found their humanity and understood this thing, and when they came here, they wanted nothing to do with Islam because they understood that it was not a religion of God, it was a religion of a foreign totalitarian government. And, for an example of that, you can look at like Sandra Solomon in Canada, you could look at there's this brother Raji, you can look him up on YouTube. He's done a few videos even during Obama's era where he tried to direct right to Obama some knowledge. The guy's very, very smart. He was a former Muslim. Matter of fact, he was very high ranking in the Muslims over in the Islamic States, and woke up to the truth of realizing that Islam wasn't real, and literally left the position of where he could have been like a prince, and came here. And they even actually do have one who was a prince who left his princehood to come to America and just be a common person and accept the truth. And he left Islam and he became a Christian, now follows Jesus Christ. So, there's examples that you can see of where a Muslim comes here escaping the totalitarianism, and that of like Omar, who is in our Congress, who does nothing but degrade our American military, degrade the American people, degrade the American country, degrade the American government, while sitting in our American Congress, okay, degrading the hell out of our nation and speaking highly of the foreign totalitarian Islamic states and Muslims as if they're an authority of elitism over that of America, and we're all sitting back complicit with this insanity. When in truth, our founders warned us these are the enemies of mankind, and that if we ever had the capability, we should wipe them off the face of the earth. But of course, that it all depends on now when you get to like the rhino scumbags of the Bush family, and where the Arabians are like, hey, whoa, don't bother. We give you oil. And then Bush being in Texas, like, you give me oil, huh? You give me oil. Oh, my family's going to be billionaires? Oh. And then they're bought right out and they sell us right out, just like the old senators of freaking ancient Greece did. You see? You got these enemies, these traitors, they should be freaking hung. And that's what it comes down to. We, the people, got to wake up to the truth, and we're going to have to take our place and do what needs to be done. And I'm telling you right now, no American should be afraid to speak their mind about these things, say these things, or express themselves about these things. Because if we're still America, and that Constitution still runs,
We have that right under two major rights. One's the First Amendment, the other's the Second Amendment. The First Amendment gives us the right to freedom of expression and speech, to speak our goddamn mind, to raise a rhetoric to that of a grievance to our government, should we have one. And then if that government doesn't want to listen to that raised grievance that we have and retain the right as what we establish this country under our Declaration of Independence to alter, amend, or abolish any form of government that doesn't want to comply with the rules that we the people set. And we set those rules in the Second Amendment. Now, the Second Amendment is the only right of any right that says shall not be infringed. There's no reason for any other right to have that note, to have that protection, because the Second Amendment blankets them. It's like an umbrella. You see, with the Second Amendment, it protects every other right. Because whenever the government tries to take a right, we got the Second Amendment, which gives us the right to raise arms and overthrow and remove that goddamn corrupt, disgusted, friggin' no good, treasonous government who's out overstepping their authority. The Second Amendment gives us that right. You see? And that right is protected in a Constitution we the people established. The government didn't give us the Constitution. The Constitution doesn't start out with we the government. It starts out with we the people in order to form a more perfect union. That's us, the people, not the government. Okay? We formed the Constitution. We declared our own rights. In the Bill of Rights, there are rights. Okay? That's what we... Now, that's another thing with Thomas Jefferson. But like I'm saying, the reason to go back real quick so you understand. My thing about with Jefferson was on the basis of... and where he did not have the knowledge about the Islamic Muslims. And it was clear that he was into learning. You see, he was in learning. And I'll give you, Thomas Jefferson was a genius in my eyes. He was an incredible man. He had great judgment, but he was learning. He was learning. He was not as smart as George Washington or James Madison. He was learning. And probably by the time he died, with that Bible that they found to him, the way it was cut apart with all the pieces, though a lot of people have theories to what he was doing, and a lot of it's bullshit. They just want to try to have, like atheists will try and say, oh, well, he removed all the passages of Jesus Christ. He didn't believe in Jesus. This is what you want to believe because you're an atheist or you're a freaking idiot. And you just want to make things into, and then it's just like all these things with this like Democratic Republic Party bullshit. You just want to have something where you can set a seed into somebody's mind to make them think something that's not true and get away with your lies. You see? But I'm going to tell you right now about lies real quick, and I keep saying this is the end of it, but this is actually going to be the end of it. We'll end with this. There is nothing. When you lie, whenever you lie, any foundation of value in whatever it is of the topic, the conversation, or the matter has become worthless. Because the lie is not real. You see, it's just not real. And if you place your faith and you place your whole entire existence into that of manipulating the world and society and people into believing your lies, you're nothing. You're nothing, and everything about you is nothing. And you may think, oh, you're getting, but you're not. It's nothing. Because in the end, the only thing real is the truth. You see, that's the only thing real. So when it all ends in this world, what's it will? Because we only get a lifetime. It's just common sense. In the end, when you leave this world, you'll find out you wasted a lifetime because you'll leave this world with what you've been living, a lie, nothing. Nothing. And then when you go outside of this world to the afterlife of this world, the only thing allowed there is what's real and the truth. So all you'll be speaking won't be heard. You'll just be silent because you are nothing. You're nothing. And God tells me that He is self-manifested as faith in nothing, that something can be, and from Him all things are, and He is the truth. You see, and you're a liar, and anybody who is a liar, you're a liar, you're nothing. You're nothing. You're of what the truth comes from, nothing. You see, the truth exposes lies and makes something real. Lies are just nothing. So, get with the program. But, a lot of people, they don't really care anyway. The liars, the despicable, ugly, evil, friggin' people that do that shit, they don't care anyway. They really don't. They have no humanity in them. But with that, like I say, I'm going to leave links to this. I know it was a lot of rambling. I hope everybody followed what I was saying and got the gist of what I was trying to say about how the Democrats are twisting history, and they're coming up with this fallacy, trying to indoctrinate the posterity that we are a democratic democracy when we're not. We are a constitutional republic. There's a great difference between a republic and a democracy, of which we can't forget. And I hope everybody got it. I'll post links to all these things for you to do your research and get your knowledge about these things. And I advise everybody to do it because, as I said, ignorance of the law is no excuse. Ignorance of knowing your place as an American is no excuse. If a damn New York City dumb kid like me can know as much as I know from taking the time because I valued being an American to learn these things, God damn it, so can you. And you should know them so you can teach it to your kids, so they can teach it to their grandkids. So we can do is what we're born as an obligation. We are born as a militant militia in this nation as the people. Okay, and we're obligated to secure and maintain this nation as it was founded for that of our posterity, which is our children and our grandchildren. That we are born with that obligation. Now, if you don't take that obligation serious and you just want a coattail ride on that of these great men who fight and put their life, and the great women in our military, men and women that put their life on the line to bless you, and you're just an ass-sitter, worthless piece of shit that don't care about nobody, and you're like, I don't have to do anything. You're right, you don't. You're one of that massive majority who will benefit greatly along with everybody else from that of what the minority does. But understand, don't come giving us none of that democratic majority bullshit then if you're not willing to really do something. Just shut up and take your place. That's all I got to say. Because pretty soon, the true Republic Americans, we're about to take our place. And that's coming real. That's coming real. But with that, I think I might make another video before Christmas, but just in case I don't, I hope everybody's on their way to a great, God-blessed, wonderful Christmas. Remember that Christmas is about more than just gifts and toys. We have the holiday and the festivity to make the excitement for that of our posterity, our children, to get so intrigued and curious about things, so that on Christmas Day, after the gifts are given, we explain to them the representation of what it's about. Our Lord and our Savior, Jesus Christ. Our God, the God who has blessed us with this great nation, the God who has blessed us with such a wonderful constitution, and has kept and sustained us a free people now for 244 years. And, God loves us all, and the only hell we endure is that of the evil within, which we allow. And we're doing this to ourselves, because if we were to expel this evil out of our nation and get rid of it, we wouldn't have such a hell in this nation. It could be like the 1950s forever, if we really got real about it and we did what we should do. But with that, I'd like to say to everybody, if I don't make another video, I wish everybody a very God-blessed Merry Christmas. Take the time to teach your children after Christmas or on Christmas Day at Christmas dinner about the truth of what Christmas is. Explain the gifts represent that of the three wise men who came on the day that our Lord and Savior, Jesus, Almighty God himself, was born in the flesh on this earth, came to suffer, live, walk a life, and suffer, and be condemned by men to die, and gave himself a sacrifice so that we could live without sin and be free and have eternal life with Almighty God, because God loves us that much. Teach our children the posterity of who we are as a true Christian founded nation. And understand, this is not our governance of a people, it's our morals, our values, and our principles. And, there's a lot of different things with the sects of the Christian religions that evolve that maybe a lot of people don't agree with. I don't care about what so much of all these different religions say. All I care really is about what Jesus said. And Jesus, I don't read anything that Jesus said or see anything of where Jesus gave direction of where anybody can say that that's not a good thing. Jesus was a moral, upright man. He was God. He was perfect. And there's nothing wrong with the morals and the values of what Jesus instilled for humanity to follow. I walk with God. Okay? So God bless everybody. Have a Merry, Merry Christmas. If this is my last video. If it's not my last video, I'll be wishing you a Merry Christmas again in the next one. Thank you all for taking the time. To anybody who listened to my live feed and watched this video. And if you liked it, comment. If you didn't like it, comment. And if you want to share it, go ahead and share it. That's what it's here for. That's what I'm doing it for. Thank you again, everybody. Have a great day. And I'll see you next time.